You eat the same breakfast every single morning, not because you're boring, because deciding what to eat is a tax on something you're saving for something else. Maybe you can't watch a movie casually. You're not watching it. You're inside the structure of it. The gap between what a scene is trying to do and what it's actually doing. Maybe someone said something in a conversation hours ago, and you're still inside it, not hurt, not angry, just turning it over, finding the thing underneath, the thing they actually said. Maybe you've stood in a room full of people, all laughing at the same thing, and felt yourself present, but not quite there, not above it, just somewhere they weren't. You've probably called these things flaws, quirks, signs that something is slightly misconfigured. What if none of that is true? What if every strange habit, every ritual nobody understands, every pattern you've carried quietly for years is simply what it looks like to have a mind that processes the world at a resolution most people around you don't run at? Tonight, we're not talking about test scores. We're talking about the habits, the strange, specific, deeply human habits of minds that work differently. From the inside, there is a version of high intelligence that everyone recognizes: quick, sharp, certain. The person with the answer before the question finishes. The one who moves through rooms like they've already run every calculation and arrived at the result before anyone else knew there was a problem. That version is mostly fiction. The actual psychology tells a completely different story. Highly intelligent people are statistically more likely to be disorganized, more likely to find ordinary conversation quietly exhausting, more likely to replay a 5-word sentence for the rest of the afternoon, finding the seam in it that nobody else noticed, more likely to laugh at things that are not quite funny, because the alternative is harder to explain. Tonight, 5 habits. Not a diagnosis, not a ranking. A map of what it actually looks like to live inside a mind that was built for a kind of depth most environments were never designed to hold. There are things you do the same way. Every time, the mug has to be the same mug. The playlist has to start the same way. The walk has to take the same route in the same direction without variation. And if something disrupts it, something shifts, not visibly, internally, something costs more than it should. People who observe this from the outside call it rigid, or superstitious, or strange. What it actually is resource management. The highly intelligent mind is an expensive machine. It burns more to process more, and at some level, the brain learns to protect that resource. Every small decision that can be made automatic will be made automatic. Every routine that can be locked in will be locked in. Not to simplify life, to free the bandwidth for what the mind was actually built to do. Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day. Einstein owned 7 identical suits, not because they couldn't decide, because they had already decided what their decisions were worth saving for. The ritual is not the habit of someone who fears change. It is the operating system of a mind that runs better when certain things no longer require a decision. You sit down to watch something. Everyone else is just watching it. You are doing something else entirely. You notice the structural shift. At the 20-minute mark, you clocked the moment. The dialogue stopped trusting the audience. You identified the scene that was trying to carry emotional weight it hadn't earned yet. You didn't choose to do any of this. It just happened. Highly intelligent minds are built for pattern recognition. And pattern recognition does not turn off because the context stopped being serious. It runs on the film, on the book, on the conversation, on the argument someone made 3 days ago that had 1 weak joint in it that you've been pressing on ever since. This produces something extraordinary in environments that actually require it, in a negotiation, in a problem that needs solving, in any situation where depth is the point, and it produces something exhausting in environments that require nothing more than simply being present. Because the mind cannot distinguish between when analysis is needed and when it isn't, it analyzes everything with the same level of attention, regardless of whether the moment asked for it. You can't half-read something. You can't half-listen. You can't sit inside a story without simultaneously being slightly outside it, watching how it works. This is not a habit you developed. It is what the mind does. when it is doing what it was built to do all the time, whether or not the moment calls for it. You know how to do it. You've learned the responses. You've practiced the timing. You can ask about the weekend and the weather and how things are going and appear entirely present for all of it. But somewhere underneath, a quiet drain is running. A study in the British Journal of Psychology found that highly intelligent people report lower satisfaction the more frequently they have social interactions, unless those interactions have depth. The finding was controversial. It shouldn't have been. The highly intelligent mind isn't built for the surface, it is built for depth, for the conversation that goes somewhere. Neither person expected when it started. Surface conversation doesn't just bore this mind, it costs it the processing power required to hold a conversation at a level that doesn't actually engage you, while appearing engaged, while also tracking everything happening underneath it, is significant. This is why the highly intelligent person often seems quiet in groups, detached, hard to reach. It is not coldness, it is calibration. The mind knows that most rooms are not offering the conversation it actually needs, and it is saving itself for the one that eventually does. Highly intelligent people are very often the funniest person in the room. This is not an accident. Research from the University of New Mexico found that the ability to produce humor, especially abstract and dark humor, correlates strongly with both verbal and nonverbal intelligence. The smarter the mind, the more precisely it can identify the exact angle at which something becomes funny. But the humor is doing something else too. A mind that processes the world deeply sees its contradictions clearly, the gap between how things are and how they should be, the absurdity that lives just underneath the surface of almost every serious situation. Humor is how that gap gets released, without the explanation that the gap actually requires. It is a door, one that opens just enough to let some of the pressure out without letting anyone fully see what's behind it. The funniest person at the table is often running the quietest interior of anyone there, not performing happiness. Managing depth in the only form the room has space for. Here is the habit that surprises people most. High intelligence and high emotional intensity are not opposites. In many cases, they are the exact same system running in both directions at the same time. The mind that processes information deeply processes everything deeply. Music lands at a different weight, injustice lands differently. A film that was trying to be moving but wasn't quite registers as a specific kind of disappointment. That's hard to explain to someone who just thought it was fine. Kazimierz Dabrowski, a Polish psychologist studying gifted individuals, called this overexcitability, an intensity of experience across intellectual, emotional, sensory, and imaginational domains in people whose minds are running at a higher frequency. And here is the part nobody talks about. They learned early that the volume was too high for most rooms. They brought the full feeling and the room went quiet. Or someone shifted uncomfortably. Or there was the look that said, this is more than the moment asked for. So they adjusted. They learned to feel at full volume and present. At a fraction of it, the exterior became still, composed, sometimes unreadable, and underneath, a mind processing every moment at a depth and a weight that almost nobody in the room will ever fully hear. The habits make sense now. The rituals are not rigidity. They are a mind protecting its best resource from being spent on things that don't deserve it. The inability to experience anything casually is not overthinking. The difficulty with small talk is not arrogance. It is a mind calibrated for depth, waiting patiently in a world that mostly offers the surface. The humor is not lightness, it is pressure, released through the only valve the room has room for. And the feeling of everything, at a volume no one else seems to hear, is not fragility. It is the same sensitivity that makes the thinking go places that ordinary thinking never reaches. None of this is easy to carry, but here is what's worth knowing. You were never too much. You were never misconfigured. You were never the problem. You were just a mind built for a depth that most of the rooms you've been in simply weren't.